Welcome to Specimen the Sociologist. This is your host, Jessamine Reichman. Now, I tend to tell people that Jessamine rhymes with specimen, but with a J, and I am a budding sociologist on a simple mission to figure out the science behind our social lives and how it can be used as a tool to stabilize our social interactions. Now, today's segment is called Principle and Pod. One day I thought to myself, if P serve as the substance of pods, how can principles serve as the substance of this podcast? Get it? Podcast. Anywho, if we understand principles to function as a fundamental truth or proposition that influences our behavior, it's important that we dedicate time to unpack various principles, whether that be principles such as forgiveness, empathy, or kindness. I have found that while these words are universally used, they are often most misunderstood. But with the housekeeping out of the way, let's dive into today's principle, and that being confidence. In the last two episodes, we unpacked the sociology behind people pleasing and how to become a secure individual. I argue that people pleasing is not a personality trait as much as it is a learned behavioral pattern. Now, this pattern is often planted by a primary caregiver during our adolescent years. We can learn to attach in either an anxious, secure, avoidant, or disorganized manner. Now, this attachment not only impacts our relationship with our caregiver, but it impacts our relationships later in life. Fear not, that is why we have today's episode, where we're learning not only how to become more secure, but how to mature beyond our default attachment style. And to do that, it's going to require one simple principle, and that being confidence. Now, I just want to reiterate, I said confidence, not cockiness, not conceit, not pride, or even entitlement. I'm talking about the good old-fashioned Webster definition, which is confidence is the faith or belief that you will act in a right, proper, or effective way. Another definition describes it as a sense of one's own power or trust in one's ability to rely on themselves. So, when you put those two working definitions together, I would argue that confidence is not a feeling. Rather, it's the alignment between your core values and your behavior. And that is why you can be shaky in your words while yet setting a boundary in a conversation. Or how you can say no without having to over-explain yourself. Or how you can reconcile a past relationship without returning to it. Or even better yet, how you can even allow yourself to dream bigger because your actions are rooted in what you actually believe. You see, confidence is far more active than we tend to think. It's not just how you feel, but it's how consistently your belief system shows up in your behavior. And that is exactly why confidence is one of the most powerful tools for overcoming people pleasing. And to help contextualize this conversation just a wee bit more, I have 3 takeaways on just how confidence does that. Now, point number 1. Confidence stabilizes your social interactions by shifting your point of engagement from will they approve of me to is this consistent with my core values? Now, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is how easy it is to conform to the patterns around you. For example, in Seattle, there's this narrative of the Seattle freeze where you look straight forward, you don't talk to your neighbors, and you choose to disengage from any small social interaction. Now, as a native Seattleite and as someone who lived in New Orleans for 5 years, I don't believe in the Seattle freeze. I will talk to a stranger. I will wave to my bus driver. I will compliment someone walking by if they have a really nice outfit. Because again, why would I compromise my core values to conform to those around me? But as simple as it is to do that for the Seattle reference freeze, it's the same way that we choose to show up in our relationships. Whether it is not saying what's on your heart or not saying something to piss your boss off or really just holding the line. But here's the part. When you know who you are, you begin to show up in spaces differently. And in doing so, you can create an opportunity for others to become their most authentic self. And that is how confidence can stabilize your social interactions because the consistency of your connections becomes anchored in your core values, which are now reflected in your interactions. Now, hopefully that all makes sense. If not, let's move on to the next point. Now, that second point is confidence produces clarity. Now, confidence does this because it removes internal conflict. When your beliefs, values, and actions are all pointing in the same direction, there's no need to second guess yourself. There's no mental gymnastics and no more replaying conversations in private, wondering what you should have, could have, or would have done. And staying on that tangent of should haves and would haves, confidence reduces fear based thinking. When you're afraid of rejection, conflict, or disappointing others, you tend to overanalyze, assume motives, and avoid direct communication. And I will be the first to admit I have been that person and I have been in that position many of times, even to the point where I ask myself, Jessamine, girl, how the hell did we get here? But here's the empowering part is when you notice yourself feeling double minded or stuck in a stagnant situation, child, you gotta do the 1 2 step, which is identify your core values and return to them through your behavior. And I have personally found when I find myself going to like maybe like my default setting of being a people pleaser, I'm like, wait a second, I can actually step out of this pattern by making simple statements such as, hey, this doesn't work for me. Or 2, I need time. Or 3, I'm not available for that. Like it literally just comes with me doing things differently, which seems really simple, but it's far more powerful than you would think. But anyways, let's go to the third point. And that is confidence will cost you your comfort, but it will bring you contentment. And that's because you're actively confronting old behavioral patterns. Now, here's a cheeky example. With the utmost respect and honor towards my parents, while they raised me to be a caring individual, they left out one critical lesson, and that being boundaries. Now, I spent much of my life people pleasing, not necessarily to seek approval from others, but by consistently placing other people's needs above my own well being. And it wasn't until I experienced repeated burnout that I had to pause and ask myself, is the way that I'm showing up for others sustainable? And in that season of life, it was not. However, as I practiced the 2 step of confidence, which is identifying my core values and operating from them, I painfully began setting boundaries to remain in relationship with the people that I love. And I say painfully because it's going to disrupt your entire nervous system because confidence requires you to act against the patterns that your body once learned to stay safe. And honey, it's no longer safe. Rather, your behavior is now stagnant. And here is the joyful part. On the other side of comfort, there will be contentment. Once you move through those initial waves of shock and adopt new patterns of behavior, contentment begins to emerge, and that being the state of inner sufficiency. Now, if you are a Christian, this Bible verse applies to you, and that would be 1 Timothy 6:6, where Paul the Apostle talks about how godliness with contentment is great gain. And as a believer, the way that I internalize that is, oh my gosh, inner peace and satisfaction with my circumstance comes by me not only recognizing God, but placing my value on Him and not of things of this world, which is status, money, wealth, X, Y, Z. Like literally, when I become content with what God has given me, bro, that is the greatest gain, greater than any financial gain that I can ever experience. Now, with that being said, let's wrap up today's episode with a quick conclusion, or at least a final thought. And that's this: confidence is contagious because it doesn't only impact you, but I believe that it can build a city. I mean, think about it. When you operate as your most confident self, you begin to set the standard for social behavior, and our interactions stop feeling random and they can start feeling reliable. Now, one of the best ways to practice confidence is to re engage with your social life. And at times that may mean going back to the place where it was first hurt. For example, I remember recently I grabbed lunch with my girlfriend, Shy. On our first friend day, I remember putting out my pinky and saying, hey, I just want to make you a little pinky promise that whatever you share with me stays with me. Because at that point, she didn't know that I had past female relationships where personal information was shared that did not belong to them. And it impacted me in a very harmful way. But with a renewed sense of confidence, and yes, a few therapy sessions, I am now able to enforce a positive social behavior, not in spite of my past, but in pursuit of a standard. And it has me thinking, what if we brought that same confidence into our workplaces? or our neighborhood cafes, or even into a corporate elevator where it is so quiet 99.9% of the time. Because if one confident person can shift a conversation, imagine what a confident city could do for the world. But, anyways, let me not get too carried away with changing the world, or else I will literally talk for hours. So, as this episode comes to an end, here are a few friendly reminders. One, confidence is not a feeling, rather, it is alignment. And that is the alignment between your core values and your behavior. Now, while it may feel difficult at first, it will become easier over time because it will simply become routine. And number two, don't overlook the small everyday moments. The way you show up with confidence might create space for someone else to heal a part of themselves shaped by past relational wounds. Now, until next time, have a powerful day.